Record started.
Excellent. Oh, Robert QF. Your name came up earlier today. Anyway, welcome everyone to those who have never spoken to me or heard me speak, which I would think would be a reasonably small number of you, but on the off chance, I am your illustrious commissioner, of which fills me with joy and happiness on every passing moment. Decided to call this meeting to kind of touch base a wee bit regarding kind of where the police force is at, where it was planned to be. As those who have been around some maybe a little longer are aware, we've been going through a bit of a change in the police force since the last coup occurred, and we have been progressively making our way through what's been known as the 4 phases. So this represents phase 4 in all true sense. Phase 1 through 3 respectively have all been finished. Phase 4 is more focused on cultural changes within the police force and making sure that the, I suppose, correct actions and behaviours are being reinforced. We all are reasonably aware that on any given day thousands of good things will happen, but on any given day we have some not so stellar things happen as well, and that's why things like PSC exist and why you all whisper their names in fear, depending on exactly how culpable you've been recently. In terms of phase 4, phase 4 is really focusing in on some of what's been identified as kind of the key concern areas. The biggest being, and this is, to be honest, server-wide, but you'll find that the server is often led by the police force in one way or another, including downwards. So what we're aiming for is to try and improve the attitude of police officers towards the general public, making sure that they all have, I suppose, appropriate tools and support to make sure that there are fewer incidents where officers lose their cool, where they take actions they know in hindsight they shouldn't have. We have fewer complaints, fewer court cases, and ideally fewer government issues as a result. One of the big reasons that we have these kinds of issues is there is a strong feeling on the server, no matter who you are, but the cops wielding more power, it's supposedly more important, I guess. That is the desire to win. I appreciate there's lots of competitive people in the police force, but we cannot operate as a group that must win, otherwise everything will go pear-shaped very, very quickly. And you'll see this kind of all the time. And for those of you who are slowly climbing through the ranks, you'll be aware that as your next rank increases, the requirements on you increase with it. And one of those that is introduced moves a little bit away from just how often do you play, and are you able to do call-outs properly, are you able to listen to instructions, all that kind of good stuff. And they start shifting towards, I suppose, the softer skills. So things like leadership, de-escalation. De-escalation is actually a really big one. I'll come back to that one. But also your, I suppose, interpersonal skills as well. Training, mentoring, these, I suppose, slightly higher level stuff. So, yes, as a police officer, you will reach a point where if your soft skills are not in line with your, I suppose, harder skills, you will find yourself getting caught. And you may find that ranks start coming much more slowly. You might find yourself becoming more frustrated with the system. But when it comes right down to it, there are certain positions within the police force that require a very specific set of skills and have a very specific minimum requirement. So we will crack straight into kind of what is required, I suppose, for police admin. I know there's a lot of people who are interested in getting into police admin, be it sooner or later. So police admin actually includes cabinet. So cabinet is essentially senior police admin. They run all the kind of day-to-day stuff, of which a very good representation of them has shown up here. They are therefore willing to give their time, and if you ever wish to join their ranks, then you'll have to join them in that, give their time to other officers and accept that you may not be the one in the limelight. So they take a more back seat. They start looking at performance of officers and guiding people into the right space, making sure the right behaviours are seen and acted, and that issues are headed off early. It's much easier for us to deal with issues before they become a wild problem and before they become a recurring problem. So the winning thing is still a major concern for me, for the entire police force as it stands. I have seen every number of conceivable arguments as to why the police should win, everything from, well, we're the police and law and order makes us the good guys. Interesting argument, but nonetheless, all the way through to, well, we put a lot of work in, therefore we should win. Neither of those are good arguments for winning. I would urge you all to strongly consider that there should be no incidents or situations that you find yourself in where the outcome is known. You should never have approached something and decide, even before stepping out of your vehicle, and even something as mundane as a traffic stop, you shouldn't have decided already what you're going to do to, or try and do to the person there. I have been sneaking around and seen quite a few of you in action, possibly without your full awareness. A lot of both the people below me and also various specifically chosen individuals who you probably won't know who they are, keep an eye on the police force and find themselves in interactions with you quite frequently. So a lot of information does get back to us, even if you don't personally see my name wandering around. This isn't meant as an exercise to get you all in trouble. It's not meant to kind of catch people doing the wrong thing, but it's to check in to make sure that the systems in place are uniformly producing the right kinds of things, the right kind of outcomes. One of the key pieces of making sure that you as a police officer can act early in situations is your ability to de-escalate. I appreciate that other people will do things and say things while wandering around that may upset you greatly. They may even do things that you think are terrible, but you must maintain at least appearance of professionalism, even if you're seething inside. We, as the police force, hold much more power than most other groups, and we have to be respectful of that power and the responsibility that comes with it. Some of the things that we've been contemplating in the more senior ranks, I suppose, to address what I see as a slight imbalance there, we are going to be pushing more aggressively for getting partners and ensuring that partners are present as often as possible. Ideally, we will be continue to trying to put the higher ranks with the lower ranks. I would prefer not to see too many higher ranks patrolling together. There's a very good both learning and experience, I suppose, opportunity there for the newer officers especially, and seen from those who are demonstrated their aptitude have received their ranks accordingly. It's good to see them as role models and mentors, I suppose, to the rest of the force. So we will be pushing for more of that. I'm considering further discussions with ETC around whether we bother formalising it would be a good way of putting it. Whether we formalise it or not, I'm leaning towards not formalising at this stage. I think it would make the system a little too stuffy and a little bit too much overhead, but it does mean that we will need to ensure that the right kinds of people continue to be put in the right kinds of places. As you're all aware, we continue to be relatively short-handed within cabinet. A full cohort of cabinet would be 8 people, which is 5 assistants, 2 deputies, and a commissioner. However, that's mainly, just for those unaware, that's mainly an element of history. Those ranks, unfortunately, essentially were emptied out at one point, or actually at several points. And so we slowly bring people back in. We avoid moving people too quickly or jumping people too far, because the experience and, I suppose, enjoyment you derive can often be reduced as you go further and further up the chain, and it becomes more and more difficult to authentically play, I suppose. So, personally, my favourite position has always been CO, but someone has to go higher, so we all have to make a choice at some point is where we end up. If you are interested in ETC or PSC, I would strongly encourage you to do so and to apply if you're of appropriate rank. If you're not quite the right rank, then I suspect you may want to knuckle down and make sure you are well known to those around you. Remember that we get recommendations and information from all kinds of officers of every rank you can imagine. While they don't automatically mean you will be promoted, they do mean that you will be brought to our attention, and they will ensure that you stay there while we're evaluating whether or not we can give you something higher. In terms of trying to make the police force, I suppose, as enjoyable as possible, it does mean that we have to tackle the often difficult topic of just general behaviour. I appreciate that everyone wants to play and have fun and have a good time, and I would hope that you do. I would just remind numerous individuals that this may be, to be granted, a minority. I would remind them that, yes, being silly and dicking around can be fun for them, but they may find that infringes on the enjoyment of others. And when other people's enjoyment is infringed upon in the name of your own, you've already gone too far. So I would not want the police force to be too dry. I wouldn't want it to be too boring. I wouldn't want you all not to enjoy yourselves. But I also want to firmly state that we need to avoid the worst kind of behaviour. What I'm referring to is specifically trolling, generally just messing with people for the sake of it, especially while in a situation, maybe if you're a little bored, ensuring that at least some level of professionalism is maintained at all times, and making sure we don't do things like taser tag, for instance. I appreciate you might be bored and you might want things to do, but nonetheless, there is plenty happening within the city at all times that I can assure you. Just because at PD nothing much is happening doesn't mean nothing is happening. So I would encourage anyone who is bored or not entirely sure what to do, get out on the roads, perhaps go some places that are a little less common, and you may be surprised by what you find. There's an awful lot of criminality going on around. You've got plenty of opportunity to intervene. And if you spend your entire time stacked up at PD, especially when there's like 10 of you, that limits our ability to cover off that. So I'm hoping that you'll all kind of join in. Phase 4 as a concept is more of an ongoing phase. It kind of never ends. It's just a pervasive new norm. I'm pretty pleased with how the initial 3 phases have gone. So the first phase was all around cabinet and adjusting information regarding how promotions and things were managed, how we kept track of people, a lot of back-end changes, so a lot of document changes and bits and pieces in there. Phase 2 was really around bringing the departments in line with my vision for what departments were. Reasonably satisfied that they have reached that across the board. Phase 3 was all around police administration and protocol itself, mainly because once you've made the initial changes, you have to kind of readjust and make sure that the right people are doing the right job. And so people aren't left, for instance, applying to the police force and waiting for ages. And then we find ourselves in phase 4. Some of the key interests I know for some officers present is around kind of what new things will be coming along, including vehicles and various things, bits and pieces, to avoid getting anyone's hopes up too much. What I'll say is that there's always stuff in the mix. There's always things being thought of, developed and looked at, especially vehicles. So maybe is about the clearest I can be. I wouldn't want to get anyone too excited. If you do have any problems with the behaviour and, I suppose, culture of other officers and such, I encourage you to come forward and speak to a member of PSC about it, or lodge a complaint, or just come and speak to a member of police admin or cabinet. If we don't know that it's going on, you will find that the person who you think is not doing a good job may be perceived as doing a good job. So you need to make sure that we're aware of the people who need a little bit of help. This isn't so much about, who can we punish. This is more focused on who do we need to speak to try and get better outcomes. Because if we can make sure that they're doing the right thing, and overall the average will rise, and eventually we will hopefully reach where they don't have to remind people that they don't have to ticket everyone. You don't have to jail everyone. You don't have to use the maximum of everything available to you. I hope has been drilled in, but I do grow concerned at times. Just to be clear, so that everyone understands where I'm coming from, if an individual that you've pulled over or you're wishing to talk to, etc., becomes a pain in the ass, they start yelling, they start swearing at you, they start being a massive dick, I understand that's frustrating, but remember that they are civilians. You are not. You're a police officer. You're expected to do better than that. So even if they're really getting your blood boiling, you still need to be professional. You still need to maintain that at least bare minimum of respect, even if they're showing you none. And that's kind of a really important point. So if you find yourself unable to deal with an individual, remember that you always have at least your CO or ACO, also NCO, or even just a higher rank or other available officer who happens to be nearby, or perhaps even your partner. There's no prizes for not calling for help when you need it. Right? No one's going to be super impressed if you find yourself in a shooting that could have been avoided. So otherwise, the police force has been going reasonably well. I'm quite content with the people who have been pushed into police administration, at least on the whole. Cabinet will continue to be kind of looked at as there are a few loose ends in that regard, but that'll be sorted out in due course. If you have any concerns regarding protocol, especially recent changes, perhaps the lack of clarity on one or two points, you're not sure what they mean, please do approach the more senior officers. They can help you out. Please make sure that you do approach the right kind of person, though. I have been hearing quite a few of our members indicating various informal protocol rules and conventions that are being essentially made up on the fly by people. Remember, it only counts as protocol if it's written in our protocol, right? So unless I or one of cabinet change that, that's what it is. Those are all of the is protocol, I suppose. So, in light of that, hopefully that's not too long, 20 minutes, perfect. I'm happy to take any questions or allow any of my delightful police admin or cabinet members to add any comments they have. I'm willing to bet they don't.
I would say from the only thing I would reiterate is the win mentality. In terms of having fun, a lot of it's having fun, but you need everyone else to having fun involved, whether they're a civilian or whether they're a cop. And trying to force a win only mentality when you're on is going to reduce that fun that causes civs to do stuff that it seems exploity or seems like they're power gaming as well. And it will go from both sides. So just make sure when you are playing, you haven't got that full on mentality to win all the time.
Yeah, I think I would add to that, and this is one thing I noted not so long ago to my distress, that please remember that when you are active as an officer, it's very easy to look at someone else who you're not familiar with their situation and assume that because something is possible, normally a breach of some kind, be it protocol or legislation, shall we say, uh, it's very easy to say that because they could have broken something, that means they did. So please avoid that assumption if you can. It can be extremely unpleasant, especially if it's found out that your assumption that they did break rules, etc., was wrong. And that can be quite embarrassing for yourself. And also starts the allegations flowing that police are unreasonable and unfair. So, yeah, make sure you're not getting caught up in that kind of stuff. You'll also find yourself enjoying your time on duty more, as people will generally spend less time shouting and yelling. No one likes having tickets. No one likes being jailed. No one likes being pulled over by the cops. But you can still make it so it isn't totally unpleasant, and so that they don't walk away with a thoroughly negative attitude towards the police in general. There's plenty of ways you can tackle that. And if you're struggling with that, then please do approach a member of police admin or ETC, and they will happily give you some pointers. Would you like to add? That's a very good point. In terms of the solicitors or lawyers, whatever you wish to call them, that may start appearing on the island, we are moving towards a system whereby they will be whitelisted formally, and therefore they'll be licensed, which will avoid the usual so-called YouTube lawyers that come out of the woodwork who are just close friends of the accused. And so that will cut down on some of the more negative connotations, I suppose, that many of us have towards some alleged lawyers. There will be some requirements around providing evidence, especially if you proclaim there is evidence. So if you grandly state that you recorded someone doing something and therefore you can charge them, you may be required to actually produce that recording. Your word is only good enough so far. Things like traffic tickets and stuff, normally not an issue, normally not something a lawyer would get involved with. But anything that is of significant criminality or has extremely long jail terms and such associated, I would encourage you to be very careful about the evidence that is collected. I know that CID is very good about collecting evidence. They spend a lot of time documenting and recording and kind of writing their cases up, which is an absolute necessity given the amount of power that they have as a group. So all those people looking forward to joining CID, I encourage if you're keen, but just be forewarned, there's plenty of paperwork associated with it. It's not a free ride. And the expectations are high, especially in that group. So yes, there will be some new requirements. However, we won't be going for things like what they do in America with the statement of rights, Miranda rights, mainly because that's a very strongly misunderstood concept anyway. Yes, I agree with that. We often find ourselves in very tense situations, especially when it regards businesses and orgs. There's no extra prizes for being as confrontational as you can be. And there's certainly no benefits to trying to lord over others. So I would encourage you all to think carefully about that. Alright, well, so where are you? There you are. Okay, go for your life.
I'd just like to add, when you say the win mentality, a lot of the time we, like Trinity said, when we go into a situation, we often start off very, I know it's not just everyone, but some people do it. We go straight to, oh, you've done all this wrong. We get all this aggressive mentality towards people.
Mm-hmm.
When we should just, a lot of the time, we control the situation from the start. If you start off calm, okay, this is what you've done. Why have you done this and that? It won't end up in a shootout. If you go, oh, you know what, you did this wrong, you that, get out of the car. It's going to, you're already starting a gunfight, effectively. So I just wanted to say, we need to be a bit calmer in the way we do things and not just go straight into aggressive mode, when aggressive mode can come if they've gone first, you know. And even then, you want to de-escalate, if you know what I mean. Do you know where I'm coming from there or not?
Yes. And it's a bit like when we suspect there's going to be a lot of hostility. If we're expecting a lot of gunfire, you know, we have a group specifically there to assist, and I believe they're more than happy to assist. I understand that it can be quite difficult for all officers from all groups, etc., to get online as appropriate due to the queue, shall we say, to fly in. But I think we do get a reasonable number of officers on. There's plenty of people there to support. I very seldomly see a time when we have too few of appropriate ranks, I suppose, so that they have a little extra firepower to work with. But we will be, to be honest, tackling this problem a little more aggressively going forward. I will be directing police admin and our PSC colleagues to start enforcing this a little more carefully, to make sure that people are not arbitrarily escalating situations just because they can. I mean, there's not really a good reason for it.
Can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
I think this goes back to when we having partners. If you look at a higher rank doing something wrong, you're going to do it wrong going through the chain. So if you higher rank, if you show the lower ranks that, you know, this is how we approach situations. We don't go straight to, before going straight to like really aggressive. That's what they're gonna progress through the ranks with the right mentality of what to do. And another thing, can we not? I've noticed it a lot. A lot of people are rocking up to a scene that might be something very minimal, but you've already got a taser or a gun out, or someone says one word and taser straight out, because it often escalates the situation when you can just talk to them, and a lot of the time it will just de-escalate itself, rather than you pulling a taser out or a gun out, or bang, it's just gone straight to 10, you know. That happens quite a lot as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, well, Sarah. Very good points.
You can mute me now.
So Jake's asked me to bring up a point for him, as his mic's currently, he said it's cooked at the moment.
Sure.
Just more towards sergeants and aboves, just try and focus on, we want essentially sergeant above to actually be patrolling with probationary officers, which is actually just highlights the point that was just brought up, is as higher ranking officers with more experience, you have more trust put in you, that you know what you're doing is the right thing in terms of how to patrol and how to conduct yourself on duty as well. So you guys need to be making sure that you're stepping up to taking the probationary constables on duty, and then setting the example for them and teaching them going forward as well. Most of what people learn will be on the job for that, in terms of going around and actually doing it, rather than sitting and having a quick PowerPoint and learning everything from that. So they'll get more practice and more experience doing it, become better at it. So I think that's more from a administration perspective, that for the probies and stuff who are new and who are learning, we need your sergeants above to make sure you're stepping up. There's no sergeants, LSC, and down as we go. Just step up and look after our probationary constables. As cheesy as it says, they are the future.
That actually hurt.
You're welcome.
But I agree. So, Lambo with a pole here. It's being considered, Lambo. It has been noted that perhaps unrealistically it isn't a particularly challenging thing to do, but we we are considering it, especially considering the amount of assets that have been destroyed and the lives lost accordingly.
All good if I add something, Molly?
Sure.
If you aren't Polair comfortable, I've got a ton of trainers who are, and they're always happy to help. If you just want to contact them, I've got a list, and if you click on ETC admin, there's always a list there. If you want to contact one of them, ask them when they're free, all that kind of stuff. I pretty much 99% guarantee they'll always, aid to help you most of the time. So, just feel free to contact one of them if you want to learn the ropes of Polair a bit more.
Good call. ETC, PSC, and the various departments all have assistance available. So depending on exactly what you need help with, depends on whom you would go to. If it's regarding your department, then go more senior in your department. If it's regarding how to do things on COP in general, even things like driving and stuff, that perhaps isn't high-speed pursuits, all that kind of jazz, then ETC can also help you with, processing and how to handle difficult individuals. There's a lot of experience with an ETC, so I encourage anyone who's unsure to make use of that. Just going back to Darren's comments about the heavily armed populace with no repercussions. Yes, I agree that there are sometimes limited repercussions. I mean, in reality, we essentially are the repercussions. I appreciate there's sometimes government intervention when people go too far or do the wrong things. But yes, it does mean that in times when there is at least a reasonably high chance of hostility, especially with illegal two-handed weapons and stuff, then we should be planning accordingly. Rolling in with a bunch of those when you're about to face a group of 10 people with assault rifles doesn't exactly add up perfectly. So that's a good point. But yes, we will be making sure that feedback continues to go around regarding that. SRT quite often run their quick reaction force, and as far as I've seen, it has been extremely effective. So I would encourage even GD to make use of calling for that when they suspect trouble may be remiss. There's nothing wrong with asking for assistance. I know that a lot of people their default call out will be, they're doing a traffic stop or something, no backup required, etc. Sometimes it's better to get backup, even if you don't strictly need it. It's not a bad thing to have another car behind you with another 2 officers available. As you've seen, a lot of unusual things happen, a lot of GSWs throw officers and such. There is some risk around that, so you can manage that by having more presence. With more officers around, you'll also find that people are less quick to reach for weapons and so forth. So thank you, Darren. That's a very good point. From Jason regarding major operations, yes, so CID has requirements regarding all of their operations must be documented afterwards. It would be good to see more debriefs from COs and so forth following, even if it isn't written per se, but following large incidents where a lot's happened, helps bring everyone back together and point out the good, the bad, and the ugly. Quite often it's just a reminder about comms and so forth, but still, it's good to go and retouch on those bases. So, yes, good call. From our delightful Kyle, I assume, talking about mistakes and such regarding calling people out. It's actually a really good point. Something that I would like to really see is if you see a fellow officer making an error, a lapse in judgment, try and approach them in a way that would convince them that they may actually want to listen to you. The faster you jump down their neck, especially if you're a superior by a long way, the less likely they are to listen to you. So you want to make sure you approach people in a way that you would personally want to be approached if you'd done something wrong. No one likes doing things wrong. Very few people do things wrong deliberately. So it's best to approach it assuming the best rather than assuming the worst. And hopefully that will de-escalate and avoid too many people getting PSC issues. But we don't see a huge number of PSC punishments coming out. So I wouldn't be too concerned about PSC chasing you down. Also a note that if you are off duty and you're driving around your cars and you accidentally use excessive speed, if you pull over when you're flagged by lights and sirens, no PSC action will resolve unless you've genuinely been extremely dangerous and reckless. So a little speeding won't get you demoted for those who are concerned about that if you're off duty.
Evading will.
Yes, evading may not cause demotion, but evading will certainly cause you PSC issues. Depends on how bad it is, I guess. Good point from Andrew regarding tasing of tyres during pursuits. Just a quick note. Going back to the original point on, there is a lot of hostility. There's a lot of people with weapons. You don't know what kinds of weapons, firearms, knives, all that kind of stuff. Be extremely cautious and very judicious about tasing tyres or anything. To the people who that is happening to, they don't care whether it's a taser or it's a firearm. They will open fire on you either way. So I encourage you to think very carefully before you go down that path. Quite often it's better to get into a pursuit with them and then use various techniques to pressure them into an accident, or should I say a mistake, and therefore apprehend them that way rather than escalating by using tasers or firearms straight into a firearm battle.
Off duty. For that one, Chris, you just call it in through your phone. You can put off-duty officer and call it through in the message you send through, but don't be joining the radio unless you are on duty.
Yes, so in regards to Mr. Hawke's delightful comment, for those of you who are unaware, not so long ago we moved to non-ELS, ELS being emergency light system, I think off the top of my head, which is a specific resource for 5M. We ditched that because it's an extremely intensive resource. And it causes all kinds of problems in terms of lag and frame loss. For instance, most of us will run quite happily at 70 or 90 frames at the moment. Certainly I run anywhere from about 90 to 120. When ELS was running, that would dive down to about 20 or 30. So we had to get rid of those. As a result, there's not a huge number of Australian vehicles that are non-ELS or created non-ELS. We do have a bunch of them coming in, some that have been made by the very talented people in our community. So yes, there will be more cars like that. At this stage, I have no plans on phasing out the so-called American cars. You do see them on our roads. I am not that bothered by using so-called unrealistic vehicles. I don't think it's the end of the day. I would prefer the greater use of 4-door vehicles. I'm not a huge fan of 2 doors because of the obvious limitations around if you have a partner or you need some other unit to take someone if you've got them in custody. So yeah, I understand what that's.
How do you want pursuits to go when we have challenges and police bikes being used? For that one there, I believe protocol states where possible, highways should be taking lead for that one. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to for that. So if SRT or a higher ranking officer, general duties officer, or even CAD is in a particular vehicle that is more capable or just as capable, unnecessary passing and stuff like that will just cause issue as well for that one there. I'm pretty sure Mendez will back me up on this. It's preferred if highway takes the lead, but it's obviously situational for that one. So assess the situation as you go. It's not necessarily always the best course of action to do it. Usually the CO will be making that call for you.
And yes, highway spend a lot of time working on driving skills that you may only, as perhaps a GD officer, would only hone while they're driving around, whereas highway has specific things in place to ensure they know how to do things like pit manoeuvres and things. as best as they can be done to both minimise the risk to themselves, but also to the offender. We're not out there deliberately trying to maim and kill. So highway, if it is getting hairy, I would encourage highway to always take lead on that. To Darren, you're a modder. Well, yes, if you're a vehicle modder, so you do either the actual modelling or you do the liveries and designs and stuff. If you approach your respective, if you're in a specific department, approach your commander, and they will pass it on. That we've actually got a special channel for it. If you're not in a department, approach a member of police admin who will pass it on, or just come straight to a member of cabinet and we will put it in there for you as well. Gary has a very good point. If you do have we won't faff about too much. If you do have server rules breached against you, please avoid yelling out about it in comms and take it to be dealt with appropriately. Especially if it takes a bit of time and a bit of recordings and so forth, as help desk sometimes does. Head on up to help desk and get it sorted. There's no prizes for making sure that every member of the police force is irritated at you because you're upset. So try and do that if possible. Yes, car balance, Joe. Yes, car balance is always a point of contention, but as you'll note, as time goes on, some cars will change, some will slow, some will speed up, some will have better handling, some might get worse handling. It's an ongoing thing. I mean, we have, I think off memory, 380 or 400 cars on the server, I forget, but all of them are kind of evolving over time. So, most of that is done by Shams and now Bob. But yes, it's all that kind of stuff is looked at. Just remember that we aren't the only group on the server, therefore we don't get all of the attention all the time.
Is Paula getting the camera back? That'd be a boss question, wouldn't it?
In terms of cars, that's all Shams. I will be looking at some of the cars and stuff.
Oh no, the camera from Paula. When you
camera.
I think it's been disabled at the moment, if due to using a lot of resources, but I don't know if that's been changed or worked on at all. That'd be up to that'd be a boss question if he's there.
Yeah, that would be a boss question.
Sorry, what was the question?
The cameras for Paula currently disabled.
Yeah, currently disabled due to the amount of resources it takes up. I'll probably look at trying to optimize it for the next couple of months. Well, not months, sorry. Next few weeks, really. Got a few things to do on the list, so fortunately it's one of the lower priority things. It's not. I mean, it is pretty low priority. You can pretty much follow any vehicle from the helis anyway. I think the only downside of following it with the naked eye is mainly due to the fact that the helis aren't super quick, but we might buff that so it's easier. I don't know, would you guys prefer to have faster helis and then kind of no camera, or would you prefer the camera and slower helis?
Do you want me to put a straw poll up for you? Would that be better?
Yeah, chuck a straw poll up.
Alright, 1 second. Rather than everyone just spamming chat, so hold your horses. Lambo, you don't get a faster.
So just to confirm, faster helis, no camera?
Yep.
Well, yeah, no camera, or slower helis and camera.
Alright, 1 second. I'll just quickly do it.
Just while that delightful straw poll is created, James, if you want to bring something up.
Yes. It's not really a major problem right now. I thought I'd bring it up before it does become into a problem. Just the use of force. And by that I mean, I want you guys to focus, and when you guys are coming up with situations, I want you to choose what you're going to be using wisely. So let's say if someone's just punching another person or is punching an officer, you don't pull out your pistol and just straight down and then shoot him until they're dead. You want to try to de-escalate situations. So if someone's doing that, you want to try to tase them. That's why you have your taser, you have your baton to use. So you want to try to limit situations without using excessive force. So there's many ways you can think of just going down. You have plenty of things to do, so you don't need to always use your pistol or your AR or anything like that. You want to try to limit all that. You want to try to get him in custody, actually make more roleplay than just straight up just shooting him. If they're showing aggressive force, yes, you have your lethal weapon. If they have their weapon out, they're going to be possibly shooting you. That's when you can have your pistol out, no problem. But if they're just punching you or anything like that, punching on, so you have your taser there for a reason. Tase them and then just put him in custody. It's point of just not straight up getting your pistol out because he's hitting you or hitting another man, and then just going down and gunning him down. That's not how it works. Not should be seen at all. Pretty much PC just will be following up with if those do come up. So just try to limit those situations where you don't need excessive force. If anyone has questions on that one, feel free to put it in. Or if you have like any concerns, or if you don't really know what to do, or like the point of use of force, feel free to DM me or put it up in questions.
Excellent. Thank you, James. Johnny says, can probies act and help anyone who asks for their help, or are they only able to help if there's a ride along with them or given permission? So, generally speaking, probies will need to be accompanied by another officer to essentially leave the station. In some cases, the CO may instruct you to make your way to somewhere if you already have a vehicle or similar. But normally, your partner will be directed to go and pick you up along the way. It's not so much because we don't want probies to kind of help. We definitely want probies to help, but just without the better or firmer understanding of how the police force works, etc., of one of a partner being with them, they can run into problems very easily. And you'll find that, especially if a probie is both new and also perhaps quite young, we'll find that some of the citizens on the island can be very abusive and very difficult to work with. And so having someone else with you really, really helps. Right. Little question. If we have a two-hander and we're close enough, can we shift L them as we can't drop our two-hand off the taser while on foot pursuit?
Knocking someone out is still quite violent compared to the taser. Like, you should have someone with you there with a non-lethal in that aspect. I know it's not always the case, but you should. That's the idea. So, well, but by using two-handed running, I'm thinking they're more thinking of SRT or SEOs giving chase and someone's taken off. So.
Yeah, and just to remind everyone that if SRT, especially if they're in a QRF role or similar, or someone, even just another member of the force is processing someone, and they are called attend something else, and they hopefully nicely ask whether you are able to finish the process for them, hopefully providing some handover information so that you're not going in totally cold, I would encourage you to do so. Refusing may not be viewed in a particularly good light. But a very good point. Correct, Darren. Tasers are not always a reliable solution. So, batons and beanbag shotguns being non-lethal again. How good do you trust 5M to be?
I think they just need to be fixed. I think the scripts on them broke, if I'm not mistaken. They were non-lethal, and then they've had some issues.
Nah, they didn't break. They were removed. They were a part of a metafile that was about 100,000 lines long, and it was causing issues.
Yeah.
I still consider batons non-lethal. I know they do incapacitate people, but it's a lot easier to get someone up from a baton strike with EMS than it is from a gunshot wound. So I would still consider the use of the baton non-lethal for that.
And also, just as a note, when you are interacting with EMS especially, please be calm. They are trying to help explain to them what's happened. Try to be honest with them at all times. Right? If you do start, shooting flares or ramming their vehicles or, threatening them and stuff, they will just leave. And I know this cannot be put too finely, but as a police officer, you will be PSC'd until you cry if you are found executing civilians. There is no reason why you should be arbitrarily killing people, especially if they're, so-called under control. And that has happened before. Ideally, it won't happen again. I think I saw one from Andrew in here. He's resetting my screen. There we are. Andrew would like to say something regarding communications with civilians. Sure, I don't see why not. Where are you? This is you, I think. Right, Andrew?
Cheers, mate. One thing I've noticed is a lot of officers, when they're communicating with civilians or processing civilians, they're not really being informative. Like, they're not building a good rapport with them for future interactions. So, like, if I've got someone, I'll say Detective Rodriguez, etc., I'll inform them of what they've done, what they're getting charged with, and why they're getting charged with it. I don't see a lot of people doing that, and that builds that negative interaction with them. So in future, if we cross paths again, it goes straight to being that negative interaction because they haven't built that rapport where, hey, we're straight up with them, we're honest, we're telling them exactly why we're doing it. And then in the future, if I interact with someone, they're like, yeah, boss, they understand that we're firm. We'll let them know why we're doing it and exactly what's going on, if that makes sense. A lot of people not doing that.
Yes, yeah, that's a fair point. You'll notice when you interact with others that if essentially how you treat them can fundamentally change how they treat you. So even if they are shouting and all kinds of unreasonable, if you behave calmly and you're collected and you listen to them, you hear them out, and you don't kind of rise to their level of aggression, you'll find a lot of them will de-escalate with you. It's not a secret art. It's not super special secret power. It really does work. It's kind of basic human psychology, if nothing else. Thank you, Andrew.
So considering our call signs have changed upon every rank, should we not be assigned with a static badge number? That used to be the system. I think the current one we have in place is fine. Having multiple badge numbers on top of call signs just creates unnecessary work and unnecessary things. I get that it can be annoying that your call sign changes, but consider it a good thing normally when it changes.
Cool. See a message from John Woods here. 2 questions. When it comes to CAD system, I notice no one uses it like EMS do. It would save a lot of communications on the radio channel and a new section to put information in stolen cars, plate numbers, instead of officers using the active call section, as it tends to fill up when people are not clearing jobs. Yes, well, police admin will be looking at CAD usage specifically going forward. We haven't really created too much clear guidance on CAD, so people have mostly kind of built it up, especially, I suppose, informally, and especially because the CAD has changed quite significantly in recent times. So yes, further instructions on how we would like CAD used to make it a bit more efficient will be coming. But yes, I agree with you. It's not currently managed in the perfect way. Can we get hotkey support for CAD? It is currently being considered, possibly.
If you've got a partner in the car with you and you're driving, they can always press the CAD button.
Yeah.
Just saying.
We were contemplating whether we make which functions you would make quick. So we'd probably use the update location button and move that to one of the function buttons was the original plan. But as I say, it's one of a really long list of things. So hopefully it will come along. But yeah, there's always difficulties with these things. There's trade-offs you have to make, including people who slip up and press the function key exactly. For instance, if we used F1 and say you're trying to press F2, which is one of your remote choices perhaps, and you slip, that could create some difficulties. So it's something we're aware of. We'll have a think about it.
Priority changing in terms of who can activate it. Probably not at the moment, unless you've got other ideas, Robert. So what was it? It says we're currently bombarded with robberies when no other high-ranking officers are on. Okay.
At this stage, we're not specifically looking at changing that, but certainly if it is an ongoing problem, I'm happy to reconsider. That hasn't come across my radar yet, but feel free to reach out to me in DMs and have a chat if you think it's a bit of a problem.
Will the gel be functional? What do you mean, will it be functional? You go through the door and they go around the sign, unless they've removed it. Oh. Alright, I'll have a look into it and pass the staff bug report through if that's the case.
Yeah.
It's the first time I've heard of it.
Yeah, we'll have a look at that. I mean, if we have to, we'll just adjust the map asset itself.
I've got a question about the new radar. Is the passenger going to be able to use it, or is it staying the driver only?
I believe it'll stay as the driver because that's actually how it's been designed. That's that Wraith system was built by a third party, so we acquired that code. Making it available to the passenger may be problematic, but we can take a look. Any thought on signing on as your department? If you're in SRT, you just sign on as SRT and not GD.
Because if SRT restrictions aren't met, that means some people can't go on and play. That's silly. GD should always be the bulk of your police force, whether someone's in the department or not.
I'm unsure exactly what you mean by that, Lambo. I'm going to be honest.
You remember the old Molden system back in Altus, where if you're in SRT, you patrolled as SRT, if you're in GD, you patrolled as GD, and highway as highway? For that, he's thinking something similar to that, where not everyone was GD, everyone was just their department, and that's it.
Are those set uniforms are there, are they not? You do sign on literally as your department. It's kind of the point.
That you only sign on as SRT, you never sign on as GD. So that would be a no.
No, we wouldn't be heading that way, no. The requirements for activating remain the same, and the control over what the distribution of officers and what their roles are remains with the CO and potentially NCO of the channel. Otherwise, you'll just have people essentially doing what they want, which is fine to a point, but it can hamstring essentially how the regions operate.
In regards to the licenses are revoked on officer's discretion. So just speeding, you normally wouldn't revoke it. Speeding, evasion, and multiple counts, like you've caught someone speeding 3 to 4 times in a singular day, that's when you would probably look at the lines of revoking someone's driver's license for that.
Yep.
I would look at the history as well for that one. Someone disprode. The maximum amount of highway patrol vehicle is 6. I'm confused by that question. 10 past 2. That's just protocol.
Might just be answering. To Jake, feeling you get 5M, some tell me the priority system works. The priority cooldown system is when essentially a bank robbery occurs, or is deemed a serious major situation is called by normally a CO. and that cooldown is displayed to everyone on the island. It actually stops you from being able to rob banks again while that cooldown is active. It doesn't block you from many other things, but the whole premise behind it is that it gives cops a bit of a breather after a major incident, so they can have debriefs and do bits and pieces and do some traffic stops and kind of normal police work. So it's not just back to back, bank, 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 bank all night long, which is what people would do when they're bored and they have too many weapons. I feel like I've missed some, so my apologies if I've skimmed through and missed your questions. Chances of reintroducing patrol unit all signs like we tried a while ago with your partners such as North One units. They were back on the Metro. I'm not hugely against the system. The problem is that with our current TeamSpeak setup and the relation of staff ranks and channel groups and so forth, means that it becomes very difficult because you have to kind of mess with all of the permissions to make it visually work. And if they're not lined up close to each other, then the benefit kind of reduces or is not so great. I have no problem really with that process. I will discuss it further with admin, but at this stage, I'm not really seeing a huge need for it. But I appreciate what you're saying. Right, there's quite a few statements here that I might be misunderstanding if there are questions in here.
And so the highway one is 10 past 2 is the maximum highway vehicle is 6. So can I sign on as highway patrol wherever as long as the maximum? I do believe it still states that you need to ask the CO permission.
Jesus, Clutch.
My bad.
Cool. What do you hear?
If he's asking PTS.
Go ahead. 10 past 2, Ken. Go for it.
My bad. In regards to the highway patrol bit, so on the GD protocol 9.5, the maximum amount of highway patrol vehicles is 6. Quite often I do see COs denying people because I do believe that they think instead of vehicles, the maximum of 6 hotel units on, if that makes sense.
Oh, right. Yes.
So what I'm more getting at, say if there's, for instance, 24 police online, random numbers, could we go ahead and activate, 12 people as hotel units, which are still practically GD into 6 vehicles?
If there is enough officers. Yeah, the problem is that we can't have many people of a single department because it means that fundamentally a aspect of policing will fall by the wayside, and our ability as a collective group to respond to different kinds of situations that pop up without any warning is diminished. So the CO does have to, I suppose, look after the ratio in that regard. Look at it, Caden, as a senior constable, when you're putting on a blue vest, I notice there are 2 different kinds. One sort of clips your duty belt, and the other is one more of a tight fit and doesn't clip your duty belts. Which one are you meant to use? You can use either of them. They're up to you. The police uniform instructions should have, I suppose, more information on that one.
I think you unlock the tighter vest at a higher rank.
Isn't it the one that's got the little badge on it?
No. So that one's terrible. No one ever uses that one. So what he's talking about is the main one you get at Senior Constable, which is the bigger one. The slimmer one is for Oscar 2 and above. So it says in the police vest that the tactical vest 2, that's for incremental Senior Constable and above.
I stand corrected.
Answers your question.
Cool. Clarification of pursuing suspects with on-road vehicles, off-road or on dirt roads. Have been told to stop pursuing off-road previously only to have a charger fly past me. So with off-road driving, it's been a problem for a while. We contemplated how we would tackle that. It's, to be honest, it's kind of a server-wide issue. My response to that would be, if the vehicle you're driving is capable sensibly of approaching the terrain that you're driving on, I don't have a huge problem with it. If you are doing off-road jumps and similar, trying to follow someone doing something similarly stupid, then maybe I would start drawing issue with. And if you're damaging the car trying to keep up with someone, then something's fundamentally gone wrong. Also, if there are vehicles that are more appropriate for chasing things off-road or chasing people off-road, then I would hope that we would defer those chases to those units, or using pole air potentially.
Why would you get the SS modded? The modded, sorry, you can go off-road already.
It's a beautiful off-road vehicle. It's great. Right. Now, just missed that one. How about keeping the wanted list with people added without removing them, or adding that they are dangerous? So at the moment, the wanted list is kind of done, as in the concept was added, and we made the basic functionality work. The wanted list as a concept is still probably going to be extended on in time, and how we use it and what it does will slowly change. There's just a lot of work behind that. So at the moment, server restart will clear that list because it's not bound in database. But we will be looking at that going forward. But yes, hopefully we can make it kind of more useful as time goes on. But you know, it was something that was going to take quite a long time, and we had a working version of it, so we pushed it out. Hilux.
Royal shouldn't be up the side of the mountain, and neither should an XR6. Like, if I see road vehicles up a mountain, I'm not going to be happy. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, so there's off-road and then there's true off-road. I mean, if we're talking major hills and, as I say, damage to vehicles, then you should really be reconsidering it. Mountains and stuff, no, that's just not only a risk thing for you and your partner potentially, but also for police assets. If it's just a race across a field and stuff, I'm not so bothered. You know, if your car could quite reasonably do it, assuming you own a car in real life, if your car could do it, then I don't have a particular issue with you doing it. But I would expect you would be driving at a slower pace. Yeah.
Very apparent minority. When will female uniforms be fixed?
Yes. The problem with female uniforms is that there is a absolutely shocking lack of that work that's actually been done in the community. So it's very hard to come across fully functioning models, etc., for them, which really does kind of put us in a bit of a bind. I recall that vests are the biggest issue there. But yes, it is something we continue to look at. We try and put out, more options available for the female officers. But yeah, I mean, we are at the moment short-handed to get any custom vests, etc., made specifically for our server. But I mean, if you come across any that you think are, look good, feel free to pass them on to myself or a member of even the staff team, and they can forward it on, and we'll take a look. police suggestion gets an awful lot of chat in it. So there's a very strong possibility that some of the genuine suggestions will be lost. So I would encourage anyone that comes up with a genuine suggestion rather than just discussions around how many helicopters will blow up in a single day. If you take them to a member of cabinet especially or a department commander, they can go and add those to an appropriate. We have a special channel that's set aside for essentially just a list of things that we're looking at in terms of development. Ooh, Jake's offering up New Zealand police. I mean, New Zealand police are obviously Australian police, but my bias may be showing. Jones, other people get close and run away while you're pressing the jail feature. It sometimes targets a person instead of the suspects. Okay. Yes, there are some difficulties with 5M's relational mechanics. How it identifies and targets people for functions isn't ideal. Can we get a clarification on illegal items? I've heard a lower on hiring station that some items like solvent aren't illegal, even though they are a stolen item.
It more falls into where
It'd be about proving it's a stolen item.
That's correct. So if we catch someone stealing it at Humane, okay, but if we just catch someone randomly down at the beach who's just decided to get into a punch on with old mate and he's got solvent on him, it's hard to prove that's stolen based off its location for that one.
Yeah.
And
it's a bit
also,
like
we have to try and prove that they're using it in the making of drugs if we're trying to go with fabrication as well.
Yeah. And with the slow expansion, ideally, of the justice system as a whole, I mean, it applies essentially the same rationale as warrants for apartments. In order to get warrants for apartments, and that normally, to be honest, CID will be the ones that ask for most of those. They require very firm grounds that the apartment has actually been used for some criminal activity. So we don't just raid apartments because you have at some stage in your life done something wrong. So perhaps not particularly well known, but the same kind of logic is applied to items, their location, where they've come from, all those kinds of things. Because even the so-called illegal solvents, there are actually quite legal ways of getting your hands on solvents and things that aren't necessarily theft. So it's the whole prove it. You can suspect, but suspecting is different from proving. Which is cool. I haven't seen anything else. If there were any more questions, if you can post them up now or send them to myself or a member of cabinet directly, or police admin, and we'll bring it up. I'm not seeing anyone jumping up and down. Anyway, so thank you all for attending. I won't keep you all here all night, as much fun as that may be. Is that many?
That's the Steve Lambert's question, Polo Department. The answer.
Nope.
There's a fat no, yeah.
Steve, you're never flying a Polo in your life.
I feel like we should just get him a special grounded tag.
We already do have that.
No, but just for him. Maybe a pink one. Really help him with
We
his,
do have one. The one that we have already is just for him.
True. Anyway, thank you all. Okay, Mr. Hawk, another question. Sure, go for it.
This is a very quick.
Does he mean a quick question? Is he's now furiously typing out while everyone's... All right, what other officers know about drug locations? Okay, so in truth, drug raids and so forth should only really be being conducted by CID appropriately. Normal officers will be aware of drug activity. This is, you're not totally unaware of, locations that are of interest, I suppose. But when it comes right down to it, especially GD, I would really not want GD watching those locations. I would defer to CID for that kind of stuff. They have a few more tools available to them.
Protocol do know about it, but you shouldn't be trying to stake them time out to plan raids. If a sergeant or above drives by the location, suspects something, they should be contacting a CED member, and a CED member will follow it up. Is the preferred method in regards to that one there. What about SRT? If we go past, can we act on it? It's similar to GD, but SRT really shouldn't be trying to lead raids too often on that one.
Well, I'm quite happy with them doing the raids, but just remember that in order to raid an area and such, a certain amount of legwork has to be done beforehand. It's, you know, you don't just see a few people picking some things off trees and you just go, oh, that's it, I'm on. So a couple of dudes standing in a field, for instance, isn't necessarily immediate grounds to start grabbing your assault rifles out of the boot and getting to it. So I would encourage you not really. I would prefer that GD generally stay clear of, not so much avoid them, but just not bother raiding them. I wouldn't want the normal accusations that come along with that around metagaming and power gaming and camping and so forth. But like I've heard comments at some stage recently, which I have raised with my good friend Diz, around a certain time frame by which you return to drug fields and so forth. No, you only go to illegal areas and such when you have good reason to be there. You may check on them occasionally, very occasionally, but normally we have so much stuff happening everywhere that there's no particular need to fish for more things to do. So that's good. But yes, if and this is something I encouraged with all the department changes that have come about, all of the departments, and bear in mind that GD is essentially one really big department that you're all a part of, even if you're part of other departments, should be assisting each other. So if CID needs backup and there's no SRT available, they're more than welcome to have GD to assist them. You know, there's certain groups will always take lead on certain things, but you should all be helping each other. If highway's in a pursuit and they just need some more cars and stuff, I would expect them to call for more help. You know, it's that kind of thing. I would like a very supportive environment whereby each of the departments will utilize the strengths that each other has. Boats and stuff will be considered at a later date, but only once civilians have some cause for them.
I think the meta in terms of everyone just trying to go for the water and sim might more become a staff issue down that, because it's there's essentially we don't necessarily have the resources to stop someone once they're in the water. In regards to that, considering that cameras and thermals are down at the moment, so that might be more of a staff issue, but I will get back to people on that one. Put on a diving suit and have someone try and follow them, because they're going to come out of the water eventually, if you can keep eyes on them. Yeah. You can't fit in the water, they die. Yeah. As I said, I think it's more of a staff issue because it probably falls under power gaming. So I will get back to people on that.
Cool.
Remember, you drive a submarine as well as you drive a boat. Helicopter, that'd be a no.
Caden, have you actually checked yourself on the player information website to assure that you actually do have Plat on your account? Most of the people who I say I can't believe I'm so late in the queue is because they've managed to put Gaben's personal Steam in. And Gabe has quite a lot of Plat on our server. I believe we're now up to, I think, 17 months. I'm not sure. But that's quite a lot of people who are not getting Plat because I've put in the example numbers. Yeah, so I advise you to check that.
Did you relog after you purchased it?
Gabe is very seriously trying. Yeah. If you have a problem with queue, have a chat to one of the staff members. Any of the staff members can help you with that problem in terms of trying to diagnose it before it needs to come to someone for so-called fixing. We actually want to make sure it's a problem first. Anyway, thank you all for attending. I have no further amazing things to tell you. If you have any further questions regarding the police or you want something to be heard or concerns, etc., please approach a member of police administration or cabinet. You can approach me if you want. Just know that I get an awful lot of people contacting me about a lot of things every single day. So a lot of messages will simply go unread because I don't have enough time. So if you're really keen on it, make sure I would encourage you to consider approaching one of the other members of Cabinet or Police Admin, and they can raise it with me in a way that it won't get missed. So thank you all for attending. Feel free to disperse and go about your day.